In order to set up your group choice, the first thing you have to do is you must have pre-made groups. To do that, you have to go to your participant sections. You can go to the gear icon on the right here, select groups, and then you can auto create groups. When you select auto create groups, you can choose how to create it based on what. So for example, if you want uh, group A, group B, group C, you can enter the naming scheme and you can put the @ here in order for it to automatically create those number of groups based on how many groups you want. If you're not sure, you can just select the question mark and then it displays what the symbol means. So for example, the @ symbol will give you group A, group B, group C based on the criteria. So that's the first thing we're doing. We're setting up the groups. And this is the quick way of doing it. So for example, you might want to have 5 groups, in which case you create based on the number of groups and you select 5. So this will give you 5 groups from A to E. Then what you can also do is if you don't want anyone or any student to be auto-enrolled in it, you can just select under allocate members, no allocation. So in which case it would create 5 groups from A to E that is empty. Then you can preview and then you can submit. Once that's done, you can go back and you will see, for example, I created 5 groups from A to E and I already assigned some members in this, but in your case, you would have 0 for all. So in your class, you should see 0 for all if you manually created it or if you auto created it, which I just showed you. So now that you have your groups pre-made, you now want to set up the group choice. And the group choice means that a student, or any student for that matter, can choose whichever group they want to be in. And you can set restrictions as to whether or not they can jump from one group to another, whether or not there's a time restriction when they can actually start applying and choosing their groups. And you can also set a limit on how many students would be in a group. So to do that, you want to go to your main course page. You want to go to turn editing on. And you also want to add an activity or resource. When doing this, you want to make sure that it is an activity because you are getting feedback from students, student input, and you want to select group choice here. Again, if you're not too sure what this is about, you can select the information icon. So in this case, we're going to create a group choice by selecting it. And then you can choose a group choice name, in which case it's going to be, in my case, sorry, it's going to be choose your group. You can have a description here in terms of depending on what your settings here are, you can set a description. So for example, you can say the student only has one choice. They can only choose once which group they want to go into. You can also say that there's a time restriction. So when you go down, you can restrict. So let's expand all. You can scroll down and you can see, you can set a restriction. You can restrict the answering time period. And by selecting the box, you can choose the date and the exact time window. So all that will go into the description. So that way, and you can display the description on the course page. So that way, when the student sees the group choice option, they will see the description of what exactly they are supposed to do. You have one choice. You have between, this time and that time and this date. And then please organize before class which group you would like to be in before you choose your group, and so on. So all the description could be inside of here. For under miscellaneous settings, you don't want the student to enroll to multiple groups. Again, it could depend on what you're looking at, but most of the times you don't want to allow students to enroll in multiple groups. Publishing results and privacy of results. This one here would be your call. In reality, students would know essentially who's in whose group. So in my case, I just show the results to the students. Students can see which group another student is in. And it will help in a sense that students, when they click on the group choice, they can show. So they can show it will show them whose group a particular student is in. And of course, it will hopefully reduce the probability of a student clicking on a group when they're supposed to have clicked on another group where their pair was where their pair was currently in. So to kind of reduce that and to reduce your workload, I would recommend just publishing the results, but that will be your call at the end of the day. The other thing is allow choice to be updated. Now you don't really want to do this and that's why I selected no, because you don't want the student jumping and hopping from one group to another. And then if you have a time restriction, at the end of that time, they can no longer switch. So then that may convolute things, and then you might have students all over the place in different groups, and then it creates more work for you because then you would have to remove and add students to groups depending on the severity of it. So I would normally allow just one choice and don't allow them to update, but to be very clear with the instructions. So beforehand, they can organize with their peers, they can log into the group choice activity, and then they can all select which group they want to be in. The other choice is show column for unanswered. I just leave it as no. Filter data for expired or suspended on enrollments. Again, I select no. Limit the amount, the number of responses allowed. Now, this is important because this is where you can actually set the restrictions as to how big the group should be or how many members a group can contain. So, and you can select this if you're not too sure, and then you can find more detail on that. But what you want to do is you want to enable it, and then you want to set a general limitation and say, for example, you want groups of 5, you select 5 or you enter in 5 and you apply to all groups. When you apply this to all groups, you would see here now that you have available groups and you want to give students the option to select groups. So what you can do is you can select each one and you can add group, or you can select all by holding Shift in my case for a Windows machine and selecting A and E, it selects all, and you can add groups. So you can do it individually or you can do it entirely. In my case, as you can see, we have groups A to E with a limitation of 5 choices, responses per, so 5 students per group. Now, going further down, we have restrict answering to this time period. So you can set a restriction if you want to get a timely response from your students. You can set that restriction, or you can just keep it open. In which case, if they have one choice, I mean, that's the only choice they would make, and then you can make your adjustments later. So this will be up to you again, and you can restrict answering and set a time and date. The other options, we can just leave it as no groups for group mode in this case, and then we can save and display or save and return to course. Once that is selected, you can go back to your main course, or it will load up the main course for you actually. And then you can see here that you have the option, you have the activity enabled. Now, from a student's perspective, if we were to log in as a student, the student would be able to choose from the selected groups from A to B. Right now, we see that we have a member capacity of 3. And this is because initially I set my member capacity to 3. I mean, if we want to make it 5, let's make it 5. So to do that, we want to limit the number of responses. We want to set that to 5 because that's what I showed before. Apply to all groups and save and return to course. Now, when we go back to the group choice, we can see that the member capacity per group is now 5. Each student will see this. They will see this window. They can see the member capacity, and they can also show group members, in which case we see here that Mark Anderson and Matt Murdoch are in group B. So this is already populated. Other students can click on CDE, depending on if it's a new group, or they can choose to join group A and B, depending on if they're already part of these groups beforehand. And that's pretty much it. Once they have selected their groups, it will populate the member capacity until it reaches the max. And then you can see a whole list. And in fact, you can view the responses, and you can see all the responses from group A to group E. And you can choose by selecting the box what you would like to do. If you would like to delete, you can delete them from the group. But for me personally, what I like to do is once this is all said and done, and you have your members in the groups, and there might be a mistake, hopefully not, by the student, then you can go to your participants, you can go to the groups, and then you can actually see here that it's actually populated by those student choices. So you might see 3, 4, 5, and so on. It might be based on how many responses you got and how many members were in the groups per group. It will populate here by going to participants again and then going to groups. You can see here that these are the members per group. And what you can do is you can remove the user. So I'm going to remove Matt Murdoch. From group B. He's going to go back into the student group. And then what we can do is if you want to move Matt Murdoch from group B to group A, I'm just going to go back to group A and I'm going to add and remove. In this case, I'm going to add Matt Murdoch to group A. Go back to groups. And then this also synchronizes with the group choice. So if you go to the actual group choice in the main page, choose your group, you will see now here that if you show the group members, Matt Murdoch moved from group B to group A. So this is just a scenario where you might have a student who made a mistake and was in the wrong group, and you, as the instructor, you have administrative access to groups, in which case you can see where the mistake was, remove that student by selecting the button and then adding them to the proper group. And that there covers the group choice. Hopefully this helps. Thank you.